Good morning. Bon dia. And bonus grazie. Buenos dias. Good morning. Welcome to your new table circle. Gaze upon one another for a moment. These are the women and men who will companion you during these coming days. I ask that the fully engaged participants now complete the attendance form and bring it to the recording secretary's table. Back table. Does any table circle need another moment? And so, dear sisters and brothers, as we enter into the day, you might want to light the candles at your table. And we as a chapter planning committee welcome one of our members, Jeannie Williams, to chair this day.
Bon dia, buenos dias, good morning everybody. I welcome you enthusiastically to yet another day of reflective prayer, contemplation, active listening, and prayerful dialogue. Our focus for today will be expressions of Franciscan life, emerging forms, and vowed life. And as with each day, we will begin this day with prayer.
This is a piece of Janet Mock's keynote address at LCWR Assembly in 2015. We are smaller and increasingly so, yet wiser and perhaps more mature as a result of the profound transformation we are experiencing. Something significant has happened to us over the past years, and we need time to absorb the power of it. the images of the mean nun with the ruler, or picture of the naive sister are shattered and must never be reassembled. We are ecclesial women and stand as adult participants in the church and in the world. And we must never rest until every trace of discrimination is erased from the institutions in which we engage, because such bias is a sin against the full revelation of God.
Once, during a rehearsal, the orchestra was moving through a fiery musical passage, which was building up to a grand and blaring crescendo. As the cymbals were clashing, and the kettle drums rolling, and the horns blaring, an impish thought crept into Lanier's mind. What difference does my flute make, with its tiny sound, in the midst of this thunderous roar of the orchestra? What if I should stop playing? What if not a note goes forth from my flute? No one will even notice. Whereupon, still holding the flute to his lips, he ceased blowing into the instrument. Instantaneously, the conductor banged his baton on the podium, and the full orchestra came to a screeching halt. In the deafening silence, the conductor peered from the podium directly at Lanier and roared, "Where is your flute?"
We, like the flute, are a small instrument in the orchestra of the cosmos. Very small, but very significant. Let us never stop playing our part. May we be what Carol Hauslander called Mary so long ago, the steady, faithful reed of God.
Again, we thank you for our prayer. Dear folks, the overview of this day rests in the October, November, and December Assembly Days of 2015, where across all 5 assemblies, there was a call to reflect upon vocation, call to Franciscan life. And thus we are graced with this day in chapter, a day that is framed as expressions of Franciscan life, emerging forms, and vowed life. We are companioned this day by guests who will give us reflection and context for the dialogue of the day. Following both an individual presentation and panel presentation, we will have the table dialogue, and then transition to the noon hour. This afternoon, we'll have more reflection with our guests and the opportunity for the open forum of listening deeply to the movement in the group.
Before we get that far, may I introduce our guest first?
Oh, yes. And Michelle, maybe come, huh? And bring the mayor with you.
I'm sorry to interrupt, but as we're beginning to look at new life, I'd just like to introduce you to the mayor of Allegany, Greg Pearl. He was invited with our other guests, and I'm not so sure we've had a mayor at one of our chapters before. So he's here just to experience us a little bit. How's your Portuguese? Spanish? No. Okay, so enjoy. And he's here for as long as he can stay, but I just wanted you to know that we have many dignitaries who have visited us in addition to ourselves, and Greg is here, and if you want to say hi.
I'm good.
You're good? Okay, thank you. Onward.
Thank you, Michelle, and to the mayor. Isn't this a good example of Franciscan life emerged in the city, in the region, in the state, in the world? Now, Jeannie will introduce to you our first speaker.
It is truly my privilege to introduce to you our presenter for today, Sister Meg Guider. Meg first met the Franciscan Sisters of Allegany in 1975 when she went to minister in Brazil. So the first Alleghanies that she met were our Brazilian sisters. Upon Meg's return to the United States 4 years later, Meg continued her close relationship with the Brazilian Allegany Franciscans. But then she came to know other Allegany Franciscans right here in this local area when she became a student and later a teacher at St. Bonaventure University. For the past 26 years, Meg has taught at Boston College School of Theology and Ministry and currently serves as Associate Professor of Missiology. For many years, Meg has lived in an intercommunity setting with 5 other sisters from other congregations. Recently, Meg served as associate minister of her congregation, the Franciscan Sisters of Joliet, Illinois. Some of us are aware that we, Alleghanies, the Joliets, and a couple of other congregations are affectionately sometimes referred to as Al's Gals because of our common relationship with Mother Alfred Mose. So for this reason, we often refer to ourselves as cousins. However, Meg aptly pointed out that really we are half-sisters because we have a common father in Father Panfilo de Migliano. So we're not first cousins, we're really half-sisters. So over the many, many years that we, and I personally have known Meg, she has taken this idea of being half-sister very, very seriously. So I introduce to you our sister, Meg Guider.
Thank you, Jeannie, for that kind introduction. Can everyone hear? Excellent. So let's begin. Come, Holy Spirit, fill the hearts of your faithful, and enkindle in us the fire of your love. Let's go back. Yeah. Okay, let's see. All right, let's begin here. Be unreserved in your love of the Holy One who sets your hearts on fire. The title of my presentation is Hearts on Fire. Very original. So for some reason, this is skipping in a way that is not. Okay. So this morning we enter into a time of focused reflection on expressions of Franciscan Clarion life as manifested in emerging forms and the vowed life. So I'm going to share with you 4 considerations to get you thinking ecclesially, personally, congregationally, and, as we heard the other day, Franciscanly about the topic at hand. Do you know why this is skipping like this? Yeah, now just. So, let's go forward with a quote from Pope Francis. The Holy Spirit would appear to create disorder in the church, since the Spirit brings the diversity of charisms and gifts. Yet all this, by the Spirit's working, is a great source of wealth. For the Holy Spirit is the spirit of unity, which does not mean uniformity, but which leads everything back to harmony. Now, I'd like to tell you a story. Several years ago, there's a story that circulated in Rome among superior generals of men religious. A well-known cardinal, a high-ranking member of the Curia, declared that throughout the world, the age of the historical religious orders was over. It was waning, and the age of the ecclesial movements and new communities, often referred to as the movimenti, was waxing. The cardinal then proceeded to make a cause and effect analogy between fidelity and flourishing, inferring that the decline of numbers among men and women religious was a consequence of their failure to live out their respective charisms authentically. A non-European superior general, shepherding one of the largest religious families in the world, was indignant at the cardinal's inference. He took issue with the cardinal's prognostications and reminded him that the action of the Holy Spirit unfolds according to the will of a gracious God, whose thoughts are not our thoughts, and whose ways are not our ways. So, coupled with the quotation from Pope Francis and this story, I think there's an instructive lesson on the nature and meaning of particular charisms in the church and the need for ongoing ecclesial discernment about emerging forms and the vowed life. It reveals how impressionistic evidence alone is not sufficient for capturing the mystery and the paradox that are at the core of every particular charism. And as you look at this, there are prizes for everyone who can identify these movements. And if we can go to the next slide. Everyone who can identify these historical religious communities. So we live out of a particular charism in the church in general and the Franciscan family in particular. But I would argue that a judgment about authenticity cannot be made simply on the basis of the waxing of some and the waning of others. It's my opinion that neither the cardinal nor the superior general got it right. The cardinal raised up the movimenti as the future of the church while seeming to disparage what he perceived to be languishing religious institutes. The superior general, who confronted the cardinal in defense of religious life, highlighted the flourishing of his own international religious family as a counterpoint to the cardinal's claims. But each in his own way sought to substantiate his respective position on the apparent vitality or lack thereof of particular charisms in the life of the church. So I think it's time perhaps for us to move from an understanding of flourishing based on Abraham and to think about fidelity and commitment in terms of Ruth and Naomi. Numeric flourishing is not the only criteria of authentic, faithful life. So, Pope Francis offers us criteria, and I'd like to share with you these 3 criteria. First, to be authentic, and let's think about this in our own Franciscan terms. We need to live out of our charism always new. There always has to be something new if we are to be authentic. And we need to be open to be surprised by the Spirit. The second point, the second criteria, is we have to live the harmony of the Spirit by building up the people of God and by fostering inclusion in the midst of variety and diversity. And the third, how do we move with the Spirit, courageously reliving the experience of Pentecost, setting the world on fire, creatively sustaining a passion for mission, and joyfully proclaiming the gospel in ways that are attuned to God's plan for flourishing and fulfillment of all creation. My second consideration, living the Franciscan life authentically. So my second consideration focuses on what I call 2 non-negotiable convictions that I think are foundational for Franciscan Clarion life. The first, through baptism, we are disciples of Jesus Christ and missionaries of his gospel. Secondly, prior to our belonging to a particular province, monastery, congregation, fraternity, or association, we are part of the Franciscan Clarion movement, a spiritual family brought into being by God's holy manner of working, and a charismatic outpouring of the Spirit that has been and continues to be an extraordinary gift for the church and the world. In choosing this theme of Franciscan Clarion life, emergent forms in vowed life, you have chosen to explore with intentionality the collective nature of your missionary discipleship as well as your Franciscan Clarion identity. You have remembered that the whole is greater than the sum of the parts. The measure of your success at authentically living the Franciscan Clarion life is to be found not in the sum total of your individual vocations, all neatly bundled together, but rather in your collective experiences of faith, hope, and love that, coupled with God's grace, have brought you to where you find yourselves today. As keepers of a divinely ignited flame that has set your hearts on fire, you are surrounded by a great cloud of witnesses who have gone before you. As part of this movement, you share in a legacy, both historical and spiritual, that has been entrusted to your care. As witnesses of truth and stewards of grace. Admittedly, this movement has a legacy of lights and shadows, of transformative graces and abundant blessings, of scandalous controversies and tragic divisions, of diminishment and decline, of vitality and resiliency, of futility and flourishing, of uncertainty and trust, of caution and courage, of mediocrity and creativity, of sadness and joy. So what I want to say is that by God's holy manner of working, you've been called into this mystery within you and among you, to be prophetic, to be evangelical, and to be mystical, and to take those impulses that find their ardent expression in the words of Francis. This is what I want. This is what I seek. This is what I desire to do with all my heart. Like the prophet Jeremiah, you have been called to new ways of knowing and loving and serving God. Like the prophet, you have been called. What do you see? Jeremiah responds, I see a branch of a watchful tree. A second time, God asks, what do you see? And Jeremiah responds, I see a cooking pot boiling over. In the former, Jeremiah envisioned the realities of newness, of life, of flourishing, and in the latter, the realities of devastation and desolation. But a prophet of hope as well as lamentation. I'll use this translation from the Youth Bible. You pushed me into this, God, and I let myself be pushed. Other renderings: seduced, enticed, persuaded, deceived, fool. You pushed me, and I let myself be pushed. Like Mary Magdalene and the disciples of Emmaus, you are called to be gospel bearers and evangelizers. Since your encounter with the risen one, what words of joy will you announce that will be a way in which you communicate how your hearts have been ignited with the fire of consolation, knowing that Jesus Christ has triumphed over all forms of suffering, violence, and death. Like Francis and Clare, you are called to be mystics, capable of intuiting and feeling deeply the movements of the Spirit in your life. My third consideration, looking backward in order to go forward. In April 1859, a new form of Franciscan life emerged right here in Allegany. New forms are part of your heritage. We know that a 15-year-old teenager felt a fire burning in her heart. 15 years old. Let's think about it. 15 years old, a fire burning in her heart. And each of you knows how the story unfolds. But I'd like to kind of take it back further, because so often we tell the story as if everything began with Father Pamphilo and Mother Teresa, and actually there's more to that story that I know some of you know because you've read the history, but we can take this story all the way back to the beginnings in the Low Countries. And they paved the way for us to think courageously and creatively about religious life and about all forms of Franciscan life today. As a group of Beguines took on the Third Order rule, 1455, they go to Comines. But what happens? Within 6 months of their establishment, the church intervenes and forces them to remain enclosed. Why? Because the church had no way of understanding a feminine form of religious life or a woman's form of religious life except monastic life. 1455, 1628, they go to Tourcoing and establish another work of caring for elderly and infirm women and teaching poor young girls. In 1847, you all know how this story goes. I think by this point, two sisters go to Glasgow at the invitation of the bishop. But they are accompanied by a benefactor who's 25 years old, who gives all her money and accompanies these two sisters to begin this mission in Glasgow. Now, those sisters go to Jamaica in 1857. Now, what's interesting, you know how the story unfolds, I'm sure. It's about 22 years later, when those sisters have exhausted their ability to do the work that they had hoped to do in Jamaica. And somebody comes knocking on the door of the Allegany Franciscans. Not once. It took a couple of knocks, okay? But you enter in to share in their Franciscan mission. My point in sharing this is that we need to understand the connections, the interconnections, and I want to share with you, these are the sisters from Nigeria and Kenya who belong to the Glasgow Franciscans and who, in a way we can say, are connected to us by those original statutes. This community only began in the late 1990s in terms of its foundations in Nigeria and in Kenya. So behold, your cousins, sisters, third cousins, whatever they are, we're connected. And now, let's look at a few more connections of your own in terms of forms of new life. Your sisters that were established with the great help of their foundress, Sister Elizabeth Sweeney. And the Comunidade Católica Nova Aliança, you'll hear more about them later. And the Compassionate Franciscan Sisters of the Poor, connected with Sister Joan. And we have the Franciscan Mission Service, Franciscans International, the Franciscan Action Network. Without the accompaniment, leadership, and benefaction of the Allegany Franciscans, where would these organizations be? So, as an outsider here, the Franciscan family says thank you. And now, a little tip of the hat to our first facilitator, Sister Carmelita. I want to just share with you some words from Catherine of Siena. Be who God meant you to be, and you will set the world on fire. In my assessment of your authenticity, I think you are who God has meant you to be, and you have and continue to set the world on fire. And so, sisters and associates and all you partners in mission that are here or viewing, you need to go forward confidently, joyfully, eagerly, mindfully on the path, not of prudent happiness. I've looked at this translation very carefully, but on the path of sacred blessedness. So, how do we journey together? My last consideration. Will the real Franciscan please stand up? So I would like to conclude with a fourth consideration by posing two interrelated questions. How do you make meaning communally of the action of the Holy Spirit as revealed in the outpouring of the extraordinary grace of Franciscan Clarion life which you and others have received? My second question, how do you make meaning communally of what it takes right now in today's world to live this particular charism authentically for the good of the church and the sake of the world? That's why the Spirit pours out extraordinary graces for the church and for the world. But I want you to think about the ways in which your beliefs and attitudes inform and influence how it is expressed through the historical forms of the three orders and emerging forms of consecration and commitment, short-term and long-term. In times of openness, risk-taking and confianza, trust in self and others, you have celebrated with joy and gratitude your experiences of spiritual renewal, mutual enrichment, collaboration, partnerships, contexts of prayer, ministry, and community. When the experiences are positive, there's a tendency to hold fast to your convictions and hopes regarding that harmony of charisms that Pope Francis speaks about. However, in times of indignation, hesitation, or disconfianza, you have recognized that it is simply not possible to ignore or set aside the realities of existing tensions unreconciled divisions that exist among and within the first order, the second order, the third order regular, the third order secular, as well as members of ecclesial movements, new communities, and mission-oriented entities. For the sake of the people of God, we cannot minimize or disregard the scandal of our disunity. And we have to deal with the unsettling question when it comes to living authentically. Will the real Franciscan stand up? So, I'd like to do a little thought experiment with you right now. And let's pretend we have a Star Trek spaceship that can move us very rapidly from Allegany to Krakow. All right? And let's remember all of our young Franciscans and those who are on fire with World Youth Day. And let's just let our thought experiment go forward. Are these young people being drawn into the dynamics of Franciscan life in a way that is life-giving? Or is the way that they're being drawn in somewhat questionable? Think about it. So, my conclusion. Living with hearts on fire. Well, I'm mindful at the ultimate end for which you have been created, and I would like to say a final word, what I believe to be a key insight as you cling to the light of the memorial from the other day as well as your actuarial study. And here's the insight. You have come from God, and you are returning to God according to the providence of God. So, my half-sisters, allow yourselves to be transformed by that purifying fire of divine love, confident that you have been called to enter ever more deeply into the mystery of living sine proprio, without claiming anything as your own, but all from the graciousness of God. May you continue to steward with wisdom all that has been entrusted to you for a time by our gracious God. And with gratitude, may you joyfully share without reservation what you have with others as you begin the process of generously entrusting to others the gifts that you have received, as you bring to fulfillment over time that divine purpose for which you were intended. Doing what is yours to do, may you encourage and sustain others in discovering the Spirit of the Lord, in that experience of self-diffusive love that goes and goes and goes until, like the woman with the alabaster jar, the jar is broken and the sacred oil spent. So let's see how the future unfolds. Given your deep desire to live your own particular expression of the Franciscan Clarion life with authenticity, and your availability to accompany others in their own processes of discovery and commitment, what more can I say? Be the fire. Seja o fogo. Sé el fuego. God bless you all.
Well, Jeannie will do a formal expression of gratitude to everyone a little later, but Meg, simply wonderful. Thank you. Thank you. Now, folks, we need about 2 minutes to transition to get our 4 panelists up front here and get settled for a moment. So I'm going to suggest about 2 minutes of wiggle time. If possible, stay in the room. This will be a very brief transition. The full break will come after the panelists. And I would invite the panelists forward, please. Hi, Kathy. You're going to be over here. Here it is. I invite you to be seated, please. And now Jeannie will introduce our panelists to you.
Sure. There's a part of me that just can't wait till this afternoon to add my thank you to Meg for that wonderful setting of our table for this morning's reflection and continued dialogue. That was wonderful, Meg. Thank you. So now, we are gifted with 4 other wonderful Franciscan, 3 women and 1 man, who will share with us in the form of a panel their own lived experience of Franciscan life through a variety of lenses from their own perspective. So we are gifted with our Sister Kathy Cahill, who will share with us about Franciscan mission service. Then, Fernando Magno, who will speak of the Nova Aliança in Brazil. Pat Simmons, one of our wonderful associates from New Jersey and also a secular Franciscan, will speak of the associate way of life. And then we will hear a personal reflection on wildlife and the Franciscan journey by our affiliate, Tanisha Hewitt. So I present to you our panel, beginning with Kathy.
Thank you, Jeannie. About 5 years ago, I was approached by one of the friars in Tampa, Father George Corrigan, asking me if I'd be willing to serve on the board of Franciscan Mission Service. And I said yes, somewhat reluctantly, not with totally pure motives. I really didn't want another thing to do, another board. But it met in Washington, D.C., and I have a lot of family there. So my motives weren't totally pure. When I started going to the board meetings and meeting the missioners, meeting the people involved in running Franciscan Mission Service, I was overwhelmed. Mostly, when I reflected on it, with tremendous hope in the future of Franciscan life, of the future of the church, people on fire with mission. The Alleghanies have been connected with Franciscan Mission Service over the years by donations, by support. Margaret Mary has been very much involved hands-on by doing mission appeals for them. St. Elizabeth's Mission Society, don't listen to that. By hands-on presenting to the missioners in training. I won't even tell you about the dumpster diving, but that's another whole story. But been very much hands-on involved with Franciscan Mission Services. Margaret McGee, very much involved, her office nearby when she was at the Federation, and connected with them. So we've had a connection. The Alleghanies have had connection by making donations to Franciscan Mission Services over the world, over the years. When I got involved, I was very much aware that it was another way, if we could get more involved with them, because we're not going to be sending sisters to Bolivia in the near future anyway, to Jamaica, to Brazil, but here's an organization who's sending people on mission. They say a picture's worth 1,000 words. If that's true, then a DVD or video will be worth 1,000,000. So let me have Denise show us a little bit in living color of what the Franciscan Mission Service does.
Echoing St. Francis of Assisi, today Pope Francis beckons each of us to live a culture of encounter. We are called to go to the margins of society and encounter God in all of our brothers and sisters. Since its founding, Franciscan Mission Service has been making this possible for lay Catholics to do. We're really excited to be celebrating our 25th anniversary this year. It's a milestone for any nonprofit to reach 25 years. 175 lay people have come through our programs and have gone on to touch countless lives while addressing issues of poverty and social justice in 20 countries and in Washington, D.C. As we have broadened our programs from long-term overseas mission opportunities to offering multiple pathways for the laity to engage in mission, we have stayed true to our founding vision.
Very quickly he realized that speaking about it and lecturing about it probably wasn't the best way to educate, but that sending people overseas, especially lay people and perhaps young lay people, would be a much better tactic. And then there was what Anselm talked about in terms of coming back to the United States, what he called reverse mission to the United States.
He said the real mission field is in North America, and our missioners shouldn't stay overseas for a lifetime, but they should come back and work on transforming North American church and society.
Whether they're going overseas for multiple years, serving in D.C. for 1 year, or participating in a short-term mission and global awareness trip, lay people come to us because they want to be a part of this transformation. They come to us because they want to give of their time, to live out their faith through service, and to respond to the poverty they see. They want to be a part of the culture of encounter. Our support makes it possible for them to participate in this relational ministry. One example of this relational ministry is in
taking Jesus as an example of what incarnational ministry looks like. How can I truly minister in the presence of God being fully present myself?
In Bolivia, prisoners have to pay for their own cell and food. To support themselves, they make handicrafts and other goods, which our missioners sell at the market and bring the money back to the people who made them. Missioners also build friendships with the inmates through vocational training, class, and Bible studies.
The inmates share how much they share with each other. I just felt a really overwhelming desire to continue immersing myself in their lifestyle. I would walk alongside them in their struggles, but also be present with the joys that come from that.
As people of God, we feel called to serve the most marginalized. We see poverty in our world, and the homeless we pass on the street, and we want to respond, but we don't know how. The Franciscan charism offers an answer. It is a way of being that enables us to fully live out our faith. It is an approach to overcome the difference between those who live in homes and those who sleep on the streets, between those who walk free and those who survive inside prison walls.
Our missioners come to our program and our volunteers and they say, something here feels different, and this is what I've been looking for. The Franciscan charism is asking us to be reconcilers, which is something we know our world needs desperately, to be relational, not just to be transactional or to deliver services, but to be in relationship with each other, to be relevant to the needs and aware of the needs that are in our community, in our world, and to be radical about our commitment to eliminate poverty and to work against marginalization. Those are the things that the Franciscan charism, among others, are offering the world, and what FMS is focused on. The strength of FMS, why we have been able to make it to our 25th anniversary, is because we're not trying to go about this work alone. It has been because of the partnerships that we have built with Franciscans, friars, sisters, secular Franciscans, as well as other lay people that are committed to the Franciscan charism. That's the vision that FMS is bringing into the world. In these 25 years. That is why people are coming to it, because it is something that is clear that the world needs. Father Anselm's vision to empower the laity and to transform North American church and society remains our guiding light.
We look forward to continuing on this journey of creating servant leaders, bridge builders, peacemakers, and advocates for change. There is still much to do in establishing a true culture of encounter, but bolstered by our faith, supported by the Franciscan family and our friends, we continue on and do our part. Thank you for joining us on this journey.
So that gives you an idea of what Franciscan Mission Service does. I'm waiting for the red card to go up, telling me to stop. Most recently, we're very much involved in Jamaica with a close partnership. Right now, one of the Franciscan Mission Service missioners is there, has been helping in schools and working in schools, and is now at Immaculate kind of helping with some of the necessities of the day, since all our sisters are up here. So many of our sisters are up here. So we'll have questions later.
Thank you so much, Kathy. And now we invite Fernando to come and speak to us about Nova Alianza.
Bom dia.
Good morning,
Queridas irmãs,
dear sisters.
como já disse, meu nome é Magno Fernando.
My name is Mario Fernando
Magno Fernando.
Magno,
Sou o fundador da comunidade Nova Aliança,
and I'm the founder of the Nova Aliança community,
que nasceu em Anápolis,
was born in Annapolis,
no centro do nosso país,
which is
Brasil.
right in the middle of Brazil.
Nós somos uma dessas novas comunidades que estão surgindo na igreja.
We are one of the new communities that is surging out of the church.
Como nos disse São João Paulo II, é uma nova primavera na igreja.
It's like we are the new springtime of the church, as Pope John Paul II said.
Essas novas comunidades têm um carisma próprio
We have our own charism,
e entre elas, elas são formadas por celibatários, sacerdotes e casais.
they're formed by young people who are celibate, by priests, and by married couples as well.
Aonde todos vivendo em comunidade
We live in community,
recebe a vida missionária como parte das suas próprias vidas.
and the very important part of our lives is the missionary zeal.
No final dos anos 80 e início dos anos 90,
At the end of the 80s and the beginning of the 1990s,
tive o privilégio de conhecer a irmã Teresa Maria Suiner,
I was very privileged to meet Teresa Sweeney, our sister.
uma franciscana que vocês conhecem,
Most of you know who she is.
num curso de formação de evangelizadores
And it was at a formation course for people to learn how to evangelize
na Diocese de Anápolis.
in the Diocese of Annapolis.
E logo após esse curso, a irmã Teresa assumiu a coordenação diocesana do projeto de evangelização nas paróquias.
And after this course, Teresa Sweeney took over being the director of this new wave of evangelization.
Eu, mais alguns jovens,
I and some other young people,
começamos a trabalhar com a irmã Teresa
so we started working with Teresa,
na evangelização,
doing evangelization,
mas também no trabalho com os pobres,
but also working with the poor,
onde a irmã Teresa nos dava formação franciscana,
and she would help us with our Franciscan formation.
onde ela nos apresentou Francisco de Assis.
She introduced us to Francis of Assisi.
Entre esses jovens, eu tive a inspiração
And among these young people, I was inspired
de começar a viver em comunidade.
to start to live in community.
Entre os jovens foram suscitando chamados ao sacerdócio.
And each of these young people felt this call.
Uns queriam ser celibatários
Some wanted to remain celibate,
e outros tinham chamado ao matrimônio.
and others were called to be married.
E começamos a viver essa experiência com a autorização do nosso bispo
And our bishop then authorized this way of life,
e o acompanhamento da irmã Teresa.
and also for Sister Teresa to be like our director, our spiritual guide.
Hoje a comunidade tem 25 anos
We are now 25 years old,
Somos mais de 250 missionários.
We have more than 250 missionaries.
Estamos presentes em 11 dioceses do Brasil.
We are present in 11 dioceses within Brazil,
E também estamos no continente africano.
and we're also in Africa now.
E trabalhamos em diversas realidades, como evangelização de jovens, crianças e trabalhos sociais.
And we work in a lot of areas with social works and also evangelizing to the young.
E também evangelização das famílias.
And we also evangelize to families.
Em parceria junto com as irmãs no Brasil,
And we work with your sisters in Brazil.
damos assistência espiritual na Santa Casa de Misericórdia.
We help with some spiritual direction at the hospital, Santa Casa.
E também os nossos sacerdotes também celebram missa no Convento Mãe Admirável para as irmãs.
And our priests celebrate Mass for the sisters at Mãe Admirável.
E trabalhamos muito juntos,
We do a lot of work together,
em especial na missão da África,
especially in Africa.
aonde já vai fazer 2 anos,
We've been there for 2 years.
que tem 5 missionários da Nova Aliança lá,
5 missionaries from Nova Aliança are there.
residindo lá.
They actually live there.
E estamos no 5º país mais pobre do mundo,
And we're in the 5th poorest country in the world.
aonde o desafio é muito grande.
The challenge is very great.
A irmã Rita Cecília esteve conosco
Sister Rita Cecilia, as you saw in the previous slide, has gone to Africa with them.
e estamos unidos para, assim, realizar esse grande trabalho de assistência a um povo tão sofrido.
And we're very involved and very dedicated to the idea of helping these people who are so poor.
Aonde a cada dia morrem muitas crianças
Every day, thousands of children die
de fome
from hunger
e falta de assistência à saúde.
and for lack of health care.
E na África precisamos nos unir, e espero que mais irmãs tenham também esse desejo de unir a nós.
And I hope that more of your sisters will help us in this attempt to make a difference in Africa.
Como o Santo Padre, o Papa, disse, o continente esquecido.
As the Pope calls it, the forgotten continent.
E lembro de uma pequena história
I remember a small story that comes to mind,
verídica.
and it's actually true.
Esses dias atrás, esses meses atrás,
A couple of months ago,
estando no Convento Mãe Admirável,
I was at the Mine.
juntamente com as irmãs e o Frei Vilmar,
I was with Frei Vilmar and with the sisters,
encontrando comigo a irmã Teresa,
and Sister Teresa was there as well.
ele disse: "Mãe, eis aí o teu filho.
And they said to Teresa, "Mother, here are your children."
Filho, eis aí tua mãe."
And children, here is your mother.
E de verdade nós, como comunidade Nova Aliança, nos sentimos filhos de vocês.
And so, I must tell you, it is true. We feel like we are the children of the Alleghanies.
E temos a imensa alegria
It brings us great joy
de estarmos servindo a igreja
to be serving the church
e o mundo.
and the world.
Temos desejo de ir para vários outros países,
We hope to go to other countries as well,
vivendo o nosso chamado
to live our calling
e levando a graça do nosso carisma.
and to take the grace that comes with our charism.
Nós surgimos da missão de ajudar a humanidade de forma pessoal
We are dedicated to serving the world in a personal way
a se descobrir ou redescobrir como filhos amados,
and to rediscover the joy of being loving children,
ao molde do Filho por excelência, Jesus Cristo.
to follow in the footsteps of Jesus Christ.
Temos o chamado de conduzir cada pessoa
We're called to lead people
por meio dos dons do Espírito Santo
through the gifts of the Holy Spirit
a uma experiência profunda de intimidade com Deus,
to have an intimate relationship with a loving God,
fazendo perceberem
to make people
e
notice
viverem
and live
o dom de ser filho
the talent and the gift of being a child
e a graça de ter um pai.
and the grace of having a father.
Pai que ama não apesar das limitações e fraquezas pessoais.
A Father who loves us regardless of our weaknesses and shortcomings.
Não pelo que cada pessoa pode fazer ou oferecer,
Not for what we can do or what we can offer,
mas pelo dom que cada um é.
for the gift that each person is.
O dom de ser filho amado.
The gift of being a beloved child.
Dom do amor de Deus para a humanidade.
The gift of the love of God for all of humanity.
Assim sendo, a nova aliança é chamada
So Nova Aliança is therefore called
a ser colaboradora da instauração e restauração
to collaborate in this rebuilding
da aliança de amor, compromisso e fidelidade
of an alliance of love with faithfulness
entre Deus Pai e a humanidade,
between God, the Father, and all of humanity,
tendo como dos nossos patronos Francisco de Assis.
and following in the footsteps of Francis of Assisi.
Desejamos levar ao mundo aquele desejo que tinha no coração dele. O amor ainda não é amado.
We wish to take what was in Francis's heart out to the world.
E por isso precisamos gritar para o mundo
And for
que o
this,
amor
we need to tell the world
precisa ser amado
the world needs to be loved
na vida de cada pessoa
in the life of each person
que sofre
that suffers
pela falta de paz
because there is a lack of peace
e de dignidade humana.
and a lack of dignity, human dignity.
Muito obrigado.
Thank you so much.
Obrigada, Fernando. And now we call on Pat Simmons, our associate and secular Franciscan, to share her way of life with us.
I thank you all for the privilege of being here, and that's a really rough act to follow. Whew. In thinking about my Franciscan vocation, I decided that it really started when I was very, very young. We were living on my grandparents' farm in Minnesota, and my grandmother, too fast? Okay. A little louder? Okay, thank you. Louder and slower, I'll try. We were living on my grandparents' farm in Minnesota, and my grandmother gave me a baby chick from the brood. And that chick followed me around as if I were its mother hen. One day, I turned around too quickly and stepped on it. And it lay in the dirt, and I ran screaming for my mother. By the time we got back, the chick was up and staggering around. It had obviously only been stunned. But my feeling over the survival of that chick and the deep memories I have of the connection between humanity and nature that's part of farm life fills my heart with joy, even today. It's a long time ago. The next little step that came was when I graduated from high school. 4 of my very dear friends joined the convent. They left right after high school. They went to the Dominican convent. I probably would have gone with them, except that I have a chronic ailment that made me unacceptable to almost any religious congregation at that time. So I felt self-pity, anger at God, and then finally I decided, well, I had to get on with life and decide where God wanted me to be. So I went to nursing school, I graduated, I got married, I had 8 children. Thank you. We traveled extensively for my husband's business, and still there was a longing in my heart that I could not name. Now we have to fast forward to 1978. We had a lot of kids in college. We were being strapped financially. My husband came and asked if I would agree to a 3-year assignment in Saudi Arabia, where we got 35% tax-free hardship allowance, and we earned every penny. I said yes for a lot of reasons, and we went. The following summer, I came back to the States with our 3 youngest children. The rest were either on their own, married, or in college. And we rented a house on Long Beach Island, New Jersey, for the summer. and became summer residents, summer members of St. Francis of Assisi Parish. And I was home. We remained as summer residents for over 10 years because we were traveling, but I came home always feeling I was home again. Every time I came back, that's where I belonged. So finally, I still had no time to figure out what this longing was, but it was still there. Then in 1984, my mother came to live with us, and our daughter was in a terrible automobile accident and was handicapped. So I was taking care of them. So for another number of years, I had no time to find out what this Franciscan thing that was eating at me was. Then in 1994, my mother died, and the following year, our daughter was killed in a tragic fire. And my husband had retired, so we were getting used to that while we were mourning. At least I had some time to try and figure out what this Franciscan thing was all about. I became more involved in the parish, and I found some people that were a little bit different than everybody else. I asked about them and was told they were secular Franciscans. So after a little bit more questioning and thinking about it, I joined the secular Franciscans. At profession, I was so filled with gratitude at finally being home, and also for the circuitous journey it took me to get there. I was elected first as secretary and then as minister of our fraternity. And it was during that time that Sister Kate, Kathleen Murphy, as you know, our beloved Sister Kate, began suggesting rather persistently that I join the Allegany Associates. So the September after a new minister was elected, I went to my first associate meeting. And here I am. In professing as a secular, I promised before my family and the church to live the gospel life. That certainly was a life-changing event. I was really home. Letting God be God in our lives each day requires prayer and the support of others who are also journeying toward unity in God. In the following years, I ministered with Allegany Franciscans and Associates, friars, my secular brothers and sisters, and others with Franciscan hearts. We ministered to the poor and marginalized through the social services offered at St. Francis of Assisi Center on Long Beach Island, of which I think many of you are familiar. Our parish worship by being a lector and a Eucharistic minister, by also heading the Advent and Christmas liturgy team for a few years, ministering to people who have lost someone in their family through our care ministry. For the last 10 years, I've been able to help some people find the presence of God in their lives through spiritual direction. And we've helped a lot of people improve their prayer life through a contemplative living program. Membership in the Allegany Associate family, in the Allegany family as an associate, has fed and nurtured my spirit and often really supported me when life was most difficult. In other words, you and the charism of this community have added a rich and precious dimension to my life as a Franciscan. Being an associate has helped me to be a better secular. And being a secular allowed me to know that I needed and wanted more Franciscan challenge and support for my life. I'm going to use the words of my beloved Sister Kate. I believe God wants me to be a Franciscan, and I thank God for that. It seems to me that knowing and doing what pleases God is also what pleases me in the deepest part of my being. I believe this with all my heart. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Pat, for sharing your life with us. And now we call up Tanisha Hewitt, our affiliate from Jamaica, who will share with us about the vowed life and the Franciscan spiritual journey.
I'm a little nervous. If you see me start laughing, you understand. A couple of weeks ago, my pastor, who is also my spiritual director, okay. A couple of weeks ago, my pastor, who is also my spiritual director, gave me a homily he delivered on 3 words: journey, build, and profess. Later that day, I was sitting there and he told me that these 3 words sum up my life. At first, I was quite clueless, not understanding what he was trying to say to me. But spending some time prayerfully reflecting upon his homily, upon the 3 words and my life, I was able to see a connection. I share with you a short reflection. I was a simple young girl from a family of no means. My mother was an Anglican, but really did not go to church at all. I was baptized in a Berean Church of God of no significance. But my journey really began when I encountered the living Christ, as we Catholic rightfully believe, in the most blessed sacrament. It was June 18, 2006. I cannot forget the day when water was poured over me and I was brought into the Catholic faith and given Holy Communion for the very first time. It was a special experience of the Lord choosing me, whispering in my heart that He has a plan for my well-being and that He wants me just as I am, with unreserved surrender. That experience of the Lord choosing me gives me a special connection with the gospel passages that deal with the calling of the 12. These passages indicate a deliberate choice on the part of the good Lord who called the men to be with Him, to heal the sick, and to send out to proclaim the good news. Is it not what we really mean by living with hearts on fire, to encounter more deeply into the mystery of the one who calls us to be with Him, so to experience the intimacy He offers? Just like the chosen men, I falter at times in my journey. I struggle to understand who God is, and my fidelity to His command is often tested. But the journey continues because He keeps repeating in my heart, "You did not choose me, but I chose you, and appointed you that you should go and bear fruit, and that your fruit should abide." Perhaps it is not accurate to say that my vocation to Franciscan life began then. But certainly my journey to God in holiness, with hearts on fire, had begun. Eucharist has touched my life in some mysterious but real way. My faith was fostered by my church community, the youth fellowship, my spiritual director, and my adopted mother. Their love and support made me realize the power of God's love. And so, the journey continues, alive with heart on fire. The one who calls me to be with him in an intimate relationship also calls me to build myself into a spiritual edifice for him. There are several rough edges to be polished out, and so he did not hesitate to use the chisel of love and the hammer of discipline to reshape me to become his beloved. But I understand that just as the journey continues, so also is the building up of this spiritual edifice called Tunisia. The chiseling and hammering must go on. The commandments of God and of the Church, the Constitution and regulations of the Franciscan order, good Christian sense, and of course, the not so common sense to guide me. I will be built into the spiritual edifice for my beloved. Since I chose to follow the way of our Seraphic Father Francis to build God's house that is in ruin, should I not then attempt to build his house in me and make myself his worthy dwelling place? Won't you pray with me for the grace to surrender to divine love, to build me into his spiritual edifice, his temple? The beauty of this journey is we do not travel alone. There are always like-minded fellow pilgrims on the way of holiness. I believe this is the beauty of the community life. I am privileged and honored to have had the experience of being chiseled into the Franciscan way, even in a small way, by opportunities to share in the communal living. And I thank God for giving me this opportunity to journey together with those who are well on this journey, to learn from their experience, to be courageous, faithful, and creative in my response to the one who calls me. I think the word profess has a profound meaning of personal witness, as if it were a confession of personal and intimate knowledge of the one who calls me and share his life with me. To profess Christ is really a confession of my day-by-day transformation, indeed conforming into the image of Christ, and as St. Paul so beautifully says, even carrying in my body the death of Jesus, so that the life of Christ may be manifested in me. It is allowing the world to see the power of God's transformative love at work in me. It is, as our Seraphic Father reminds us, to preach with our lives and, if necessary, use words. Recognizing that we come from God and we return to his beloved, to his loving embrace, I pray that my experience of journey to God with the fellow pilgrims in this Franciscan way enable me to build in my life the spiritual dwelling place for my beloved, so that I may courageously, faithfully, and creatively profess the transformative power of divine love. Thank you.
Thank you, Tunisia, and thank you to all of our panelists who so generously and beautifully shared your life with us.
Well, as the kids today say, awesome. Awesome. We need to take a break. Break room etiquette, in, out. Listen for the Mother House bell. It's, let's come back at 11:15. Have a great pause. Thank you. Could I see Margaret McGee for a moment, please?
Pat, okay, we doing okay on these candles? Yeah. Thank you. Wonderful. Are you the one? I still put out, is that Franciscan spirituality? No, that's not going to happen. Well, we got to go through with that. I told someone last night that Pat Shirley got coaching, and I was told it had to be Pat Reed. And I could no more remember Pat Reed. And I said, it was you. Okay. So let's just talk about the local because we Or are they right in here? I'll catch them. Thank you. Thank you so Because all committees, all those reports are not one by one, that justice was being called out. Right. Yeah, I'll work that from the microphone. We'll keep that very simple. We'll have the two people just move out there. We'll need to have the microphone up there, I guess. Or maybe we could, will you ask Ellen if we could have the lavalier down here? Sure. And maybe Hannah could use the lavalier and the other two here. Okay. And then we got everybody on that committee covered, right?
Yes, I will.
You're gonna get someone. Okay. Wonderful.
And then after lunch, we will move into the table organization and the large machine. That'll work.
That needs a little new, a little work.
Yeah, all right.
Good. Very good. Wonderful. Oh, could not have asked for more.
This is really awesome.
Thanks, Judy.
Yeah, as the kids say, awesome. Right.
So if we could get the lavalier, it would help. Leave one with panelists. Good, Margaret, thanks. I also sent Kathy Doyle on that pursuit. I see her right there. Actually, those here, just use the lavalier with the panelists, and we grab a sheet for the floor. Yes, I think so.
Oh, yeah, this one.
Yes. Thanks, Jeannie.
Now, if the other do I need to do
Check 1, 2, 2, test. Test 1, 2, 2, test 1, 2, test.
It's making a bang.
1, 2, 2, test.
Good.
If we should do a handheld up there. Let me use. I'm going to pull them in a little closer.
Check 1, 2, 2, 2, test.
My husband said it won't be.
Check 1, 2, 2, test.
So I'm going to hold on to both of these till they all get back.
Still on.
Like so, these. Yes, we need two people on the floor with those microphones. I don't know where they are.
Well, there's one, and she has one.
Let me use the lavalier. No, those are two new ones up here.
Okay.
But
And then,
where's the other
let me
one?
get Ellen. Ellen, wait, yeah. Ellen, you're going to help with the...
Yes.
Do you know if there's another mic?
I don't.
Okay.
I have no idea.
Who would know that stuff?
Huh?
Who would know that stuff?
Steve would know that. Steve would. The IT guy. We welcome you. And we're going to adapt our program for the day. This next half hour is given over to you for an opportunity to interact with one another and with those on our panel. We think there's a great wisdom and knowledge about expressions of Franciscan life in this chapter body, as well as in our panelists. We also realize that perhaps you might have questions or thoughts that you'd like to direct to any one of the panelists. So this next half hour, it is much like we did in the other open forums. Please raise your hand, and Annie or Ellen will bring a microphone to you. If you wish to direct your thought or question to a specific panelist, please just indicate that, and all the panelists are welcome to respond if they wish. You have two microphones up here. Meg is also joining this group.
Just one.
Good. So, just gather your minds and hearts for a moment here. And when ready, please raise your hand.
Oh, you didn't want it.
I just want to thank all of our people who spoke. I thought they were wonderful. And, you know, a few times when I was in formation work, we talked about like the Franciscans, some of them have these volunteer programs and things. And yet, when we hear, like Kathy, I was unaware of that FMS and the program in Brazil. And I guess the question for me is, we don't need to begin something new, but how can we begin to network more with these organizations that are already in existence? And really, you know, we have so much in common with them in our Franciscan rootedness. So I guess the question is, you know, how do we begin that process of becoming more networked?
Well, I would, in response, just say that certainly with Franciscan Mission Services, FMS, that the congregation has been networking, and perhaps as a board member, I haven't done a good job of communicating, you know, to the rest of the congregation exactly what's happening with that. But I'm delighted to have the opportunity to share a chapter so that you do all know what's going on, and you know, the congregation is Kim, the executive director, whom you saw doing most of the talking on the film, has spoken to the board of directors, has been to Jamaica for site visits and so forth. Does that answer your question, Judy?
It does, and I'm just wondering, like, you know, I work in a hospital, but we have, in Niagara Falls, it's a very deprived area, and we have a clinic for the poor. And I'm just wondering, like, at places like that, you know, and just to begin getting more of a Franciscan presence, you know, how do we begin doing that stuff so that we can get into some of these areas where there is poverty, you know, and getting more, you know, how would we engage something like that here, like in some of those poor pockets?
Well, if you're asking specifically about FMS, excuse me, for years, their focus was totally on sending missioners abroad. Just recently, we've done more, as was referred to in the DVD, in the Washington, D.C. area. I don't know as that particular organization would be able to go out any further than that. So I don't know if you wanted someone else to take that too, but I really don't know. Thank you.
I would just like to first of all thank Meg for helping us to make all those connections that she did, and to remind all of us that the Alleghanies did more spawning in Jamaica, the Blue Sisters, and just to further a little bit about the connections, the Blue Sisters had their last week. They are praying for us now. We prayed for them then. They're praying for us now at our chapter. But I have continued to be in touch with Sister Margaret, the Scottish Franciscan, who came with Sister Eleanor to Jamaica when we celebrated 150 years of the school that we still run, that they founded when they went there in 1859. And last week, just before coming, I got a note from her. They're having their chapter this week and asking for prayers, and I mailed back to say, we are together in spirit as we have our chapter this week. So just to bring you up to date on Franciscans that we are in touch with around the world, which is beautiful. Thank you.
Also, thank you for your presentations, just touching. I have a couple of questions for a couple of people. The Nova community, you may just want to mention, we talked yesterday about your family, and then do you all live in community? And then also, how do you sustain yourselves? Do you have jobs, or are you focused on, I know you're focused on the ministry. Just a little bit about that.
Sim, nós somos comunidade de vida e de aliança.
So we are a community of life and an alliance.
A comunidade de aliança são aqueles que são membros, mas moram em suas casas.
So the people who are part of the alliance are members, but they live in their own homes.
E a comunidade de vida são aqueles que deixam tudo e vivem exclusivamente para o trabalho missionário.
And the ones that are for life actually live in community and have given everything else to be there and live in community.
E uma da graça da experiência que temos é viver da providência de Deus.
And one of the blessings that we have is we live through the providence of God.
Nós doamos a nossa vida para o trabalho de evangelização e de ajuda ao próximo.
We give our lives over to evangelization and to help to help our neighbors.
E vivemos a experiência de sermos mantidos pela providência.
And so our lives are sustained through the providence of God.
Que é manifestada pela vida das pessoas, dos benfeitores que ajudam os missionários a ir aonde eles não podem ir.
And we are sustained through benefactors who are in favor of supporting the missionaries in this work.
E essa experiência para nós é muito gratificante.
It's a very gratifying experience that we're going through.
Porque nesses 25 anos de comunidade nunca nos faltou nada.
Because in 25 years we've never lacked for anything.
Deus assim providencia todo o necessário.
God makes sure that we have everything that we need.
Para o nosso serviço missionário e para o sustento dos próprios missionários.
So not only God helps us with our missionary work, but he sustains us in our day-to-day lives.
Thank you. Tanisha, how did you meet the Alleghanies? And what's that been like?
It's a very long story, but I'm going to go short. Okay, the shorter version for it, it's through my priest, who's my spiritual director. He's the one who introduced me to this congregation, but before I was looking at different congregations because I was being attracted by many different sisters of many different religion or religious order. So I've seen a few sisters, the Poor Clares. I've read on them. I've seen the Mercy Sisters, the SMS Sisters, and so on. But I didn't feel comfortable or feel at home. And he told me that there is a Franciscan order at Immaculate. So he spoke with a few sisters for me to meet with them. It was December 2014. That's when I first spoke with them. And from there until now, and still continuing.
I would just like to continue on what Sister Maureen Clear spoke concerning the Scottish Franciscans. A couple months ago, I had a telephone call from a sister who...
Terry, slow down. Slow down.
Should I begin again?
Just go slow.
Yes, I'd just like to follow up about this A couple months ago, I had a telephone call from a sister who is stationed in Grenada. And she wanted to meet her sisters, her Franciscan sisters, because she was a Scottish Franciscan. And she came to Jamaica, and she was staying with the Mercies. And the Mercies brought her over to Immaculate, and we had a very lovely visit. And I learned from her that the Scottish Franciscans started a new community in Nigeria. And she's Nigerian, from Nigeria, and she had come over to Jamaica to do some work at the University of the West Indies. And she hopes to at some. I think this just went off, did it? No. I forgot where I was. Oh, yes. And she also told me that they were starting a new community in Barbados. And for those of you who don't know, Barbados is another Caribbean island. Yes. A couple of the sisters met this sister, but she didn't get to meet all of the sisters in the community. So there are so many connections. Thank you.
I'd like to mention something regarding Fernando. I'd like to mention, thank you. I'd like to mention something regarding Fernando's mission and ministry, to assist him possibly. Fernando had asked me if we could send some of our Franciscan Blessings money for his work in Africa. And Franciscan Blessings was started for the work of our sisters in Brazil, Bolivia, and Jamaica, for the people of Bolivia, Brazil, and Jamaica. So I would like to suggest that if there is anyone in this room or watching from home who might like to take on that as a challenge to start their own support program for Fernando and his ministry in Africa and then wherever he expands to, that I'd be very willing to share with you how I got it going and a little more detail about how that might work. That just as support for Fernando's ministry and therefore our ministry.
Obrigado.
Thank you.
I don't want to put her on the spot, but Sister Jeanette Reagan is a Scottish, well, you are a Scottish sister, and now she's one of us. But it may not be the sisters that we're talking about from Scotland. It's a whole different community. Okay, but there's just another Scottish connection.
Okay. I'd like to say thank you to everybody, too, for the presentations. And Meg, I have a question. You spoke several times of the scandal of our disunity. Could you speak a little bit about what that means?
Well, basically, the scandal of our disunity is, here's a good example, not to cast aspersions on our Franciscan friar brothers, but there have been several efforts for them to come together to form a single province or two provinces here in the United States, and all of the provinces say, yeah, two provinces would be good. Our province and all of you other guys get together to form the other one. At least that's the story on the street. But when you consider that provinces from around the world have consolidated, it's like, really, what's the problem in the United States? That would just be one example. That's not so scandalous. But I think, speaking from my experience with a number of congregations, this is, sort of my experience, is that we sometimes enter into partnerships with other Franciscans. And instead of these partnerships going forward, they implode. It's a different kind of fire. It's like a oil and grease fire. And sometimes it has to do with personal relationships that were for whatever reason not reconcilable. But the legacy of that breakdown in relationships continues to have an effect. And one of the points I wanted to make clear in my presentation was it affects us. It's a sadness or a tragedy for us, but we need to be so aware of the scandal that it creates in the minds and the hearts of the people who often love all of the people that were involved in the situation. And I think that's where we as Franciscans really need to pay attention when we're working in partnership. Sometimes this happens internal to a congregation. Sometimes it happens between sisters and friars. Sometimes it happens between third order secular fraternities and other Franciscans, the Poor Clares, third order regular or friars. And we just need to be conscious of how sometimes charisms compete. My explanation about World Youth Day is, World Youth Day is a wonderful opportunity, but there's also a shadow side of World Youth Day, where there is intense competition to attract young people. And we can say, well, it's just recruitment, but there's also some strategies that are manipulative. And so that's one thing. I think we're, in terms of the scandals come in, is there have been some scandals related to property, shared property or property given, and then it was sold, but the people who gave it didn't know it was going to be sold, and they didn't have it in their contract that it needed to come back to them. It just couldn't be sold outright. And it creates a spirit of disunity. Does that answer your question?
Just a small question. Which African country are you in? I missed which country?
Em Guiné-Bissau.
The African country that they're working in is Guinea-Bissau, which is a small ex-Portuguese colony.
The West Coast.
It's been in civil war for almost 20 years now. There are literally 5 doctors in the whole country.
I too just want to say a word of thanks to all the presenters this morning. But as I was listening, another thought came to me, and it really was part of a presentation given by Margaret Carney a number of years ago in the Franciscan Institute. She was doing a program on Franciscan life and third order life. And I remember her giving the history of the third order and how really our third order regular life developed from the secular experience. And that there were some of the third order, they were just simply third order followers of Francis and Clare, who wanted to live a more regular life together in community. And so began to do that, and that's how our regular life grew out of the secular. I think so often people have the impression of it being the other way around. Just as so many Franciscan sisters community have birthed associate programs in the recent years. That's what we think happened, but it's the opposite. But the other thing that, and especially as I hear of this emerging forms, of that one of Margaret's dreams was that at some point the seculars and the regulars would not come together, but at least have some expression of their unity as growing from one family. So that might be another dream or hope and possibility, that we don't see ourselves as distinct or higher or better or less, or that we truly see that we're all Franciscans. And I love, Meg, how you kept saying, will the real Franciscan please stand up? Because those of us who are in the vowed orders often think we're the real ones. And there's so many others out there. And I think your presentations have helped that. So I have a dream that someday the secular and regulars will have a sense of coming together and sharing a great celebration of we are one family with the other branches. So that's my hope.
I bring a question forward as an associate. I've been an associate for 7 years.
Language already in the handbook that we use the phrase associate way of life, because that's what it is. So does that answer? So we're very well aware of that. Just want to piggyback a little bit on what Margaret McGee shared a minute ago, is that one of the areas that Kathy Doyle and I have been working with the associates regarding is an understanding of charism and what that really is as Franciscan Sisters of Allegheny. But I thank Meg and the other panelists from this morning, because I'm beginning to see even that a little bit differently, that we are fundamentally allow ourselves to be confined by what the Allegany charism is and lose that broader perspective of the call to collaborate with the worldwide Franciscan family. So thank you for your question.
I have a little question to Fernando. I would like if he can explain us a little bit about the daily life, how they live. They are two groups. And I saw a little chapel, it's a church, they get together, how often they meet, and they have a daily, how they live. I would like to know a little bit more, It's a large group, and looks like it's very interesting. Thank you.
Sim, nós da comunidade de vida, que doamos toda a nossa vida ao trabalho missionário.
Well, for those of us who are living the life, who dedicate our entire life to the missionary work,
nós todos os dias temos a missa comunitária.
We have a daily mass that we participate in.
Rezamos as laudes.
We do laudes.
Juntos. Temos um momento de oração pessoal.
We have personal prayer time.
E também temos um momento de oração comunitária.
And then we have a communal prayer time as well.
Temos a nossa formação.
Then we do formation.
E no período da tarde à noite são os momentos dos nossos trabalhos.
And then we work in the afternoon and in the evenings.
Onde nós vivemos várias pastorais.
We are involved in several different ministries.
Em várias realidades onde estamos inseridos.
And in a lot of different realities that we participate in.
Já os membros da comunidade de aliança.
Then the alliance part of the group.
Eles moram nas suas casas, têm os seus trabalhos.
They live in their own homes, they do their own work.
Profissionais.
They're professionals.
E também têm os seus momentos de oração pessoal.
Then they also have prayer time, personal.
E uma vez por semana, momentos de oração comunitária.
And then once a week we all get together and have a...
Fernando? Okay. It has been said that only God knows how many congregations of Franciscan women religious there are. And I've asked the executive director at Franciscans International, how many are there? There are 57 in the Franciscan Federation, but how many more are out there that aren't in, and she said about 100. This is in the United States. So is that a sign of disunity? Not necessarily. It's many charisms, perhaps. Who's to say, right? Who's to say? I do have a question for Pat Simmons. Pat, you said, I thought, among many of your wonderful sharing with us, that being an associate helped you to be a better secular. And I have been wondering about the differences and the similarities of the two organizations. Would you say a little bit more about that, please?
Yes, I think, excuse me, I think that Margaret's point was well taken, that we should all be able in some way or another to come together. And my experience has been, I became a secular first, quite accidentally. That's just the way it happened. And then was really invited to become an Allegany Franciscan. I had been working already with several of your members and was in love with your way of life and the way your sisters can get together, enjoyed one another. I think there was just a joy of life in the community of sisters that I witnessed that really, really attracted me. So that's why I did it. And then I found that the sharing here, the sharing in our monthly meetings, it's a smaller group, it's deeper. We do get, not that I don't know my secular brothers and sisters, I do, but it's a fraternity of almost 100. So we don't have deep relationships with everyone, and our meetings are not that intimate kind of sharing that we do in the associates. So the two really balance one another, you know? I can be called to do something as a secular, but I also take my now Allegany identity with me when I do that. So I hope that answered you, Kathy.
I'd like to add one thing to Kathy's earlier comment. I think there's a difference between the multiplication, a multiplication that occurs because there's new challenges, new possibilities, new opportunities that lead us for sometimes geographical reasons or theological reasons or spiritual reasons that we do need to multiply. And the divisions that I was talking about isn't so much how many groups there are or where they all came from, but as you follow the histories, you do see that there are these break-offs and split-offs, and sometimes it was because of ethnicity, sometimes it was because of racism. But what's interesting to see then is how historically, you know, God seems to find a way to make lemonade out of lemons, you know, and not to say that we're lemons. It's only to say that there are things that happen and occur that need to be reconciled. So I guess maybe a better way of talking about what I refer to as divisions is to ask, where are the relationships, personal, congregational, institutional, between countries, the Franciscan family in different places, relationships that need to be reconciled, and reconciliation doesn't mean everybody comes together and forms one big happy family. It means that we are reconciled in our relationships, that if reparations are needed historically, we do what we can to bring about those reparations, but that reconciliation allows us to remind ourselves and the world that we are a sinful and a holy people, and that we model what it is that we most desire in our journey together toward the reign of God.
And that lovely note to conclude the meetings. Thank you, Sheila. Thank you again. Thank you, and to all of you who have lifted your voice up as well. And now we're going to transition to a very happy thank you. Margaret.
Thank you. You can. No, I didn't say that. Let's. And thank you for your involvement, engagement in this conversation, which will continue later this afternoon. At this time, and I think it's very appropriate that we've been talking about our Franciscan spirituality and how we share that and how it grows. And, you know, will the real Franciscan please stand up? And so we'd like to acknowledge those folks who are with us day in and day out, who are serving, who truly have Franciscan hearts and minds. So I'm going to ask our housekeeping, our maintenance to come up. Come up. Everybody come up. Come up. The Mother House, office staff. I just want to, before we finish our thank you and blessing, also to just everybody be aware, and I know upstairs everybody can hear us, because there's other people around the house and upstairs that are working who cannot come down because they're serving the sisters, the nursing staff, the housekeepers, the dietary people that are getting ready for our meal, and the sisters' meals. There's so many people and Franciscan hearts that walk with us, that work with us, that are here with us day in and day out. We love you, and we thank you for the many ways you bless our lives with your presence and your love. So thank you very much to all of them here and throughout the house. And so we just like to sing, and this goes all through the house. We're going to sing a blessing. All through the world. And all through the world, but especially for our Mother House staff, the blessing of St. Francis. May the Lord bless you. May the Lord keep you. May He show His face to you and have mercy. The Lord bless you. The Lord keep you. May He turn to you His countenance and give you peace. The Lord bless you. Thank you, and continue to be blessing for. I just have to say that with everything that's been happening and building up for the chapter, these folks all throughout the house have been tremendous. And just the way you've picked up and doing a lot of other things. Thank you so much, and God bless you.
Margaret, just say at 1:30.
Thank you. Okay. And for everyone else, we will reconvene here at 1:30. Thank you.
Margaret? Play the committee, yeah.
Sure. Yeah, I should be in there all afternoon. I'm so perfect.
That's very nice.
That's good. Thank you.
How are you? All righty. Hi, dear. How are you? I'm not even seeing you.
You make us all feel so warm.
We're so busy at our tables. And you're at new tables.
Yes, new tables.
And you haven't had a chance to have any dialogue yet, but that will happen. Hi, Kathy. Yeah.
It was easy.
Can I start with Grace? Yeah. Yeah. Let's just for a minute. We'll see if we can get another one or two here.
Okay.
These people were wonderful.
Thank you.
Be careful. Here's Jeannie, good. Well, Aldenir, wonderful. Translator.
Gwen?
Is Goya around? Super. You're going to translate, Judy?
good job.
Thank you. Thank you.
Good job.
Okay, folks, all that's blessing going well. I thought the morning was marvelous.
Fantastic.
Yeah, it was very interesting. All unfolded.
Good.
It was unfolded.
Oh my God. I know, I looked around at a few people and I could see the tears.
Me
Yeah,
too.
right, oh, yeah.
And that question of what the real Franciscans
I know.
were.
I know.
Is that one to take with you for life?
Exactly.
Yeah. So we're all happy and it's abundant and blessed. Okay. Yes, Nancy.
Request, is it possible for a copy of the guider's talk to be
It will be. It will be made available after chapter. She has some things she wants to tighten up and stuff. But people got to pray for Fernando, Victorio's. Hopefully we can get
Sure.
Kathy. And,
Okay.
yeah. Okay.
So eventually all that will go on.
Exactly.
Okay, folks, anything that we need to pay attention to? Any dimension of hospitality, needs, anything, agenda?
I do have a
Kathy,
request
please.
for an announcement.
Uh-huh.
Do you want to hear that?
Sure.
Is that okay? Okay. Grace Yap is offering a follow-up to the financial report section that we did, that, was 2 days ago or yesterday or whatever, the financial report section. What she has is an event that would be held in February. It has to do with the showing a film of St. Francis and the Sultan, and she could use it as a fundraiser. It would be, of course, getting the word out about Franciscanism and Muslim Franciscan legacy and all of that kind of thing, but also as a fundraiser for the Mother House. She sees it. It could be
Next February.
She gave it as the main reason, as the fundraiser for the Mother House.
So does she want this previewed, Kathy? Is that what she's asking?
I think that she does have it here.
It's not out yet.
Okay, it's not out yet, but she might have a trailer or something.
She's on the list, I guess, to get it, to start showing it to folks.
Showing it.
Yeah.
But what is she asking of this group?
She would like an announcement made, I think, that she would be showing that in, I guess, Jamaica in February as a fundraiser for the Mother House.
Okay.
As an example.
You have to slow. Yeah, no, thank you. Okay. Now, I would say this is an example of what I'm getting about 8 a day of this kind of thing, that just have no relationship to chapter, whatever. So we need to be consistent with how we do this too.
Right.
Yeah, Margaret.
Put a note on the bulletin, right? She could put an ad or a note on the bulletin board.
Yeah. We've mentioned at assemblies the work of, because Franciscan Action Network is partnering with this group to do the Sultan and the Saint. So we've talked about the film coming out. Again, I think it's a memory that would need to be refreshed, that people have a chance to see it. There are trailers out, we have them on Facebook. I don't think this is the space or the time for it.
Okay.
And it's something that could continue because we will be supporting that.
Could we ask her to put an announcement on the bulletin board?
Sure.
And even to alert to watch for the trailers,
Right.
something like that?
Yeah.
On Facebook.
It's going to be a feature
Okay,
film.
we're not going to spend lots of time with this, folks.
Right, right.
So,
I think the distinction there, which would allow it to go